do have to ask a question about the resort.
Okay.
So I'll admit, I have not skied in Steamboat in a time, because when you have kids and you live in Denver, you become the. Was there once like the big kind of gondola there? Do I have that memory correct? Like the tram kind of?
No, we've never had a tram.
Really? Okay.
I don't know.
I don't know why I
You're
have that
Jackson.
memory. Yeah.
You make it happen, Sarah. Yeah, okay.
I don't know why I have that memory then, of getting on a larger.
Well,
Were
gondola.
you a kid and it felt big?
Right.
Maybe that's
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know.
Huh.
I think we had it. I mean,
Always been just gondola cars.
yeah, 8, 10.
Okay.
Yeah. That's funny.
It must be confusing it maybe with the trip around the same time,
Yeah.
pre-children to Jackson.
Probably.
Back when I was able to go skiing different places. Now my kids are older and
So,
now we're
now
skiing
you can-
different places.
Yeah.
Hey, Bill, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes,
I can't hear you guys. Can you hear me?
we can hear you. You can't hear us?
So are we on mute now?
Catherine, can you still hear us?
Yes, I can still hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you too.
I can hear. This is Matthew Mendisco.
Okay.
I can hear. This is Tim Woganot.
This is Ryan Banks. I can also hear you.
Sounds like it's a Michael problem.
Yeah, we can hear the dog.
Morning, everybody. I still can't hear the conference room myself. I'm trying to work it on mine. Bill, but let's go ahead and get started, if you wouldn't mind.
Let me see.
Let's ping Sonia and
Yeah.
find out how close she is
Okay.
to coming in, and then we can get going.
Okay. Oh, yeah, because actually it was locked.
I probably.
Oh, you did? Okay. Oh,
That sounds like Sonia.
It does sound like so.
Michael, can you hear us yet? No.
We can't.
Michael, can you hear us now?
In progress.
I'm gonna do that. That would work.
Maybe Michael can try logging out and joining the meeting.
I'm on my phone. I can
Can you hear
hear
us?
you. For some reason, the Zoom on my computer is not working.
Hey, just come on down.
Yeah.
Well, I forgot that it was in person. I would have been there. I drove right by it getting here. Sorry.
Do it on the way.
Yeah, I was rushing back here to get on the Zoom. All right. Can everyone hear everybody?
Yes.
What's that?
All right. Well, guys, I just want to start off the meeting by saying thank you to our consultants and Kaplan and Kirst, Polly, you guys. Been fantastic getting this over the finish line. After our last meeting, I did go ahead and sign the letter to go to the neighborhood jurisdictions as well as the CDOT. So our statutes are taken care of. I did
Hey,
hear back from
Michael.
a couple of people. Yeah.
Hey, Michael. Michael, do you mind muting one of your devices? Because we're hearing you twice.
Oh, how's that? Is that working?
I still hear an echo. Does anyone else hear an echo, or is that just me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
You also have to mute your speaker.
All right.
You're logged in on 2 devices, so if you just mute one of them.
Oh, maybe that'll work.
Yeah, that's better.
There you go.
Thanks, Michael.
You're absolutely right. Thank you, guys. No, just wanted to thank everybody again that's worked on this team project. And I'm just looking forward to these survey results. I think we've all been anxiously waiting to get what we have coming out of that. So just want to move forward with Bill. Get started.
Great. Thank you, Michael. Well, we have a pretty packed agenda today, so I want to kick it over right away to Catherine Haney from Newbridge Strategy. That is a very experienced polling and research firm based here in Colorado that's done a lot of work on transportation issues, including the Eagle Valley Transportation Authority. We engaged them to do the poll here on the RTA formation process. This is a poll of the entire kind of formation proposed area. We'll talk subsequently about how we're going to do surveys in individual communities as part of our summer outreach and community engagement process. So I'd like to, without further ado, kick it over to Catherine, because there's a lot to go through here. And then I think it's going to foster a lot of conversation, I hope. So let me stop sharing my screen so she can share her screen.
Is it working, Bill? It says I am screen sharing. Okay.
I see it. We see
Okay.
it here.
Okay, great. Okay. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today. And we really appreciate doing this work with you all. We feel as though we learned a lot and we have some really good ways to talk about these potential proposals that we may be putting forward in the future. So just quickly, what we did, we conducted a mixed methodology survey among 300 registered voters throughout, as Bill mentioned, the potential district, which we just refer to as Yampa Valley throughout the survey and throughout our presentation. We were in the field in late April, and we contacted folks via text message invitation, as well as live telephone interviews. So we did interviews on both cell phones and landlines. As we do with any survey that we conduct in Colorado or across the country, we made sure that the interviews were distributed proportionally across the district in terms of the registered voter population. And we also set quotas for demographic subgroups like gender and age and party to make sure that we were speaking to a representative audience. And as I'm going along, feel free. I can't see anyone because I'm on double screens and my PowerPoint comes up on both screens. So if you have a question, please feel free to chime in. We've got a good 45 minutes to talk through this, so I'm happy to answer questions as we go along, and also questions at the end. Okay. So we asked a question about how much voters have seen, read, or heard about the potential RTA in the Yampa Valley prior to the survey. We had about 3 in 5 tell us they had heard a lot or some. However, I really want us to focus on that 18% who said they heard a lot. Those 44% who said that they've heard some, we tend to think of them as fairly squishy, and maybe, you know, they've heard something in passing, but normally these folks haven't heard quite as much as they think they have. So focusing on that 18% who've said they've heard a lot, those tend to be folks with higher levels of formal education, as well as our older voter groups, which is fairly typical in terms of education about these local or regional issues. We started off the survey asking about the proposal to create the RTA just conceptually. So we did not ask actual ballot language. And that's something that I'm going to be, and Bill's going to be talking about as well, that we'll keep coming back to as we're presenting these results. So we did not test actual ballot language, meaning that we described the concept of creating this RTA to voters. That language is there on the left. And we had about 3 and 4 tell us that they would vote yes, with about half telling us they would definitely vote yes when they hear about this RTA just in concept. And that's important because when we get into testing actual ballot language, we do see sometimes a bit of a drop off when we add in all of that legalese type language, which can be fairly confusing for voters. However, we start off in a very, very strong spot here with the idea of creating the RTA. Of course, at this point, voters have not heard about the fact that this RTA would actually have to be funded, which we'll get to here in a bit. When we dig into what groups tend to be most supportive of this creation of the RTA, our Democrats are overwhelmingly supportive. Our independents, about again 3 and 4, are saying that they would vote yes to create the RTA, and our Republicans, rather predictably, they tend to be a little bit more skeptical about new things being passed or about ballot measures in general. We have about 3 and 5 saying that they would vote yes, and 1 and 3 saying that they would definitely vote yes. Again, as I mentioned, our Republicans tend to be a bit unsure until they've learned more information. We have about 1 and 5 telling us that they are undecided, just from hearing that initial conceptual language right off the bat. We took a look at this language as well by geography. So we broke out Steamboat, the rest of Routt County, not including Steamboat, and the city of Craig. So really overwhelming support in Steamboat in particular. However, even in Craig, we have 3 and 5 telling us that they would vote yes. So really broad support across the region for creating the RTA.
Catherine, just one question.
Yes,
Before we
ma'am.
move off the slide, hey, it's Sonia in the room here. I
Hi.
just want to make sure that I'm understanding what the balance of Routt County is. So that would include the other municipalities. You have the Oak Creek, Hayden.
Correct, just not Steamboat.
Got it. Thank you.
Yes.
So we have in the crosstabs, we can pull out Oak Creek, Yampa, and Hayden. They are probably pulled out in the crosstabs. I just can't remember for sure right now. If not, we can get that. Probably the reason we don't break them out separately here is proportionately, those are pretty small cohorts.
Sure.
And so, we kind of put all that together, but we can still break those out for the group.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I was gonna say, Bill, I'm not sure they're even gonna be big enough. Just given that we are at a 300 sample size. We can certainly take a look, but even then, I think we might be a little too small.
Yeah.
It's fine.
But
Okay.
we'll have a plan to get
Yeah.
feedback from all our communities, which I'll discuss later.
Still good numbers.
Yeah.
Definitely. We also looked at this creation of the RTA language by length of residency as well, because we find in Colorado in particular, there's sort of this separation between folks who are newer to the state versus longer term residents. So this dynamic here is fairly typical. Our residents who have been in the area for a shorter amount of time are a little bit more supportive. And then our longer term residents are a bit more opposed to the RTA creation here. Again, I think that's fairly predictable, particularly with what we see in dynamics across the state on issues like this. However, still very strong support there from even our longer term residents. So we had that initial first ask about just generally creating the RTA, and then we followed up with language specifically about increasing sales taxes to support the potential RTA. So we were about 3 and 4 saying that they would support the creation of the RTA with no purse strings attached. And here we introduced the idea of a sales tax increase to support it, and we dropped down to still a majority support, but 53% saying they would vote yes, and 40% there saying that they would definitely vote yes. Only about 1 in 3 say they would vote no.
I'd like to jump in real quick just before we move off this slide. So we didn't ask actual Tabor ballot language in this poll because I don't think we wanted to be as forward to poll recipients that like this is an already decided thing, right? And our work plan has a brush fire survey planned for later in the summer if we're truly identifying possibly putting the funding measure on the ballot so we could actually test Tabor style ballot language. So if that's a direction we're going to take, we have that plan to be able to do later again in the process before making the ultimate decision. I will say that in my experience, when you test more a concept like this, and then people later see actual Tabor or hear Tabor style ballot language, we probably are going to see a fall off. So even though we're at 53% here now, I want to temper expectations. I think those numbers, once someone hears shall taxes be increased, that number is going to come down a bit. And then, but that's also, I did the matrix of our election options for us to conversate on after this. And we'll talk about those issues as well as part of that conversation. Okay. Sorry, Catherine.
No, I can't agree more, Bill. I just want to reiterate what you said. You know, it would really be our preference and our recommendation that we do test actual Tabor ballot language, given the opportunity, just given what Bill said about there being a drop off when the first sentence of a proposal is shall taxes be increased. So, you know, I can't agree more, Bill, and I'm glad you jumped in there. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
Okay, so these next few slides are a little different, but we wanted to illustrate the differences between that creation language that we tested and the funding language. So that really dark pink bar on the left side, that shows the voters who said that they would vote yes on creating the RTA, and the light pink bar on the right side is those who said they would vote yes on funding the RTA. So we wanted to be very clear about where, in just testing this conceptual language, we have fall off. As Bill said, we might see additional fall off when we test actual ballot language, but we wanted to illustrate sort of how voters sort of move around as they hear about the potential tax implications of this potential measure. So our Republicans, we start off at almost 60% saying they would vote yes on creating the RTA. When they learn about the tax implications, that support drops down to about 2 and 5. And as we work our way across the slide, we see that drop off importantly among our independents, who are a very important key subgroup, particularly in Colorado, where they make up almost a majority of voters in the state. And even among our Democrats, we see an 18-point drop off when they hear about the potential tax implications of the measure. Again, we looked at this by geography, so you can see that drop off among residents of Steamboat is about 28 points when they hear about the sales tax implications. And City of Craig, we have about a 15-point drop off there. So really it's our Steamboat residents where we see the most erosion of support when it comes to funding the RTA.
And just a reminder, that's the biggest voting block is that Steamboat resident. So if there was a tax question put on, it's critical to bring the Steamboat number up.
And again, same dynamic here among our shorter and longer term residents. We actually have about the same amount of drop off regardless of length of residency here. So our longer term residents drop below that 50% threshold for our yes votes. We also looked at those who have taken public transportation in the area ever compared to those who have not taken public transportation. So as you can see, support for creating the RTA is highest among those who have taken public transportation at least in the last year. And that drops off a bit for those who have not taken public transportation. And that chunk of voters who have not taken public transportation, their support drops below 50% once they hear about the tax implications. After the
question,
yes.
just real quick on that one, Catherine, can you just tell me what's going on with the plus 25 and plus 15 in the bottom?
Yes, absolutely. So the plus 25 is the difference between that 86% above the dark pink bar and the 61% above the light pink bar. So it's just showing that difference there. Same with the 15%. It's just the difference between the two bars. Just a quick reference point when we're looking at subgroups. Is that helpful?
Thank you.
Yes. So following the sales tax conceptual language we presented with voters, we asked them to give us 1 or 2 reasons why they would vote yes or why they would vote no on the proposal. So this slide we show a summary of the yes respondents. On the next slide, I'll show you the summary of the no responses. For the most part, folks tell us that they would vote yes because this option would reduce traffic and also provide reliable transportation for commuters, particularly the workforce, the local workforce in the area, as well as increasing accessibility for local residents. And this is a summary of why our no folks say they would vote no. And really, it's just this overwhelming sense that, voters feel as though, and I'm quoting here, these are not my words, their words, they're being taxed to death. It just feels like they're paying too much in taxes already. And there's, just general mismanagement of funds by government entities. So it's nothing you all have done or necessarily will do in the future. There's just this general anti-tax sentiment that we're seeing not only here, but across in all of our work across the state. So when we look at the intersection of who said they would vote yes on the create proposal, as well as yes on the funding proposal, we have 47% who would vote yes on both. We have about 1 in 4 who would vote yes on the create measure, but they would vote no on the funding measure, and 15% who say that they would vote no on both. And I will tell you from some of our other work, other places, I think this 47%, yes, it is below the 50% threshold. It's a bit higher than what we've seen other places. But again, we're really just testing these measures conceptually. So maybe we got a little bit of inflation here, just given we weren't testing actual ballot language. We also gave voters some additional information about the Steamboat Springs ski area, and we told them that the resort had pledged a minimum of $1 million per year for 20 years to help fund the RTA. And a majority, 51%, told us that knowing this information made them more likely to vote for the proposal or made them feel more favorably toward it. And about 1 in 3, or just under 40%, told us that it made no difference in their decision at all. So we knew that this was something on the table, it's potentially on the table, and we wanted to get a read on it from voters. And here I think this told us that it at least doesn't hurt our cause, right? So if folks hear that information, it's more likely to help or just make no difference in their decision. We also asked about the Mountain Rail project, same sort of structure that we conducted for the RTA measures. So we asked first about whether they would support or oppose the creation or the advancing of the Mountain Rail project. And we had almost 80% say that they would support the creation of the project, with a majority saying they would strongly support it. And when we asked specifically about funding, this was a separate second question about using local funds to offset the cost of operations of the Mountain Rail project. We have just as many saying that they would support the measure. However, we have some drop off in intensity there of those who say they would strongly support the project. Again, once we start talking about creation versus funding, things, particularly with some of our more tax averse subgroups, just get a little more squishy. So that's probably what happened there with some of that intensity. So after we gave them all of this language about creating the RTA, funding the RTA, and asking about the Mountain Rail project, we gave folks a list of potential projects or items that could be funded by the potential sales tax proposal. So this is a list of all the items we tested. Importantly, we have over half or majority who say that each of the items we tested are extremely or very important to fund. So that's that dark pink column on the far right side. And then that light pink bar just shows those who said that each item was extremely important. Items that rise to the top tend to be ones that talk about providing new bus routes or access to public transportation in areas that currently aren't served by public transportation. So we had one item, that's that top item there, about Stagecoach, Oak Creek, and Yampa. We also tested an item about Steamboat 2 and Heritage Park that also was deemed to be extremely or very important by 64% of voters. So
jump in real quick.
Sure.
Sorry to interrupt. So just so you all know, it's kind of hard to read. The print's kind of small. We are going to send this deck out to everyone, so you can have it, read it, dig more in. But for example, that top question, there's an asterisk next to it. So we didn't ask that question in Craig. We only asked that question in certain areas. Likewise, for Craig, the circulator bus, we only asked that in Craig. So I just wanted you all to see that. So we don't have folks in Yampa judging Craig's circulator bus. Here.
And is that the same, the Steamboat 2 in Heritage Park that was also not asked in Craig? Okay.
And we, in the fine print, I think it shows kind of where we asked those questions, but we tried to just circle those questions around those communities of interest as much as we could.
Got it.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Catherine. Going.
No, it's a great point. And of note as well is that top item is a fairly small sample size, just given the population in that area and the proportionality to the rest of the district. So that is a small sample size. The other items that we asked just in certain areas have a more robust sample size, but just so you're all aware that top item is a small sample size. But for the most part, we can look at the directionality of these items here and see that really the way that we're talking about these funding items resonates with voters, and particularly items that emphasize improving transportation options for local workers.
Yes.
Yes. Someone.
Hello?
Oh,
Yeah.
Just taking a phone call.
Yeah. I'll
Which
mute.
cactus?
Keep going, Catherine. I'll mute.
okay. Okay. I think that's all I wanted to say on this slide.
You mean down by the water?
No, I am not muted.
Okay, let them work.
Whoever's talking about the water, we can hear you.
Okay.
The river sounds great.
No, I haven't done anything to Paulie's. That's yours. Goodbye.
Okay.
Yeah, it looks like,
Oh, okay.
There
we go.
You
I got
him. Okay.
oh, good lordy.
I thought that bill was me, Bill. That's why. Okay, go ahead. Keep going.
Okay, plowing ahead. So when we look at these items by various subgroups, particularly by party, there are some distinctions in how much importance voters place on these items. So for example, our Republicans, about 34% are saying that providing new bus routes is extremely important, compared to our independents and Democrats, who on the same item 69%, 69-ish% are saying that item is extremely important. So when you're looking at this slide, we call this our Rubik's Cube slide. Basically look for the colors in common. So we have a column showing Republican results. The middle column is our independent results, and our right column is our results by Democrats. And if you look across those two columns, you can see the colors or items in common. So that providing new bus routes item for Stagecoach, Oak Creek, and Yampa rises to the top, regardless of party affiliation. Establishing a new bus route in Craig, that's that red item, that resonates across the board, as well as improving transportation options for locals. That's that green box. Again, we also looked at region, and there are some important distinctions here. Again, that green item, so improving transportation options for locals, resonates regardless of where voters are in the district, as well as, in this case, actually participating in regional planning for Mountain Rail, and some of the other items as well pop here for various parts of the district. We also tested some statements in support of the RTA sales tax increase, as well as some statements in opposition. So the next few slides will be specifically related to those support statements. I'm going to show you 2 slides of statements, and it sounds like things are pretty small. So I apologize for that. I'll try to describe things as best I can. But really what it comes down to is that, again, statements about local transportation options, increasing accessibility, safety, reliable transportation, that type of language resonates with voters when we are talking to them about the sales tax increase for the RTA. So our messages our statements on this slide in particular are the ones that resonate the best with voters. So when we're looking at how compelling statements are to voters, we're really looking for above 30% saying that the statement is very convincing. So that's that pink bar going across the page, sort of on the right side. So these are in rank order in terms of most compelling to least compelling. But really, all of the messages all of the statements we tested are deemed to be very compelling by voters, except for that one at the very bottom, which only reached 22%, saying that it was very convincing. And it's about reducing the carbon pollution that contributes to climate change. And we do a lot of work on those types of issues. And really what it comes down to is climate change is just a very, as I'm sure you can imagine, a very partisan and politicized issue. So that one doesn't really do it for us. However, and I'm going to flip back, not to make you all dizzy, but all of these messages, all of these statements we tested are very compelling, which is good in terms of communicating about this measure as we go forward. We looked at, again, back to our Rubik's Cube slide, we looked at how these statements resonate across or don't resonate across party affiliation. So again, we have Republicans a bit less convinced by these messages than our independents or our Democrats. We see that there's a message about the city of Craig directly benefiting from the RTA. That does best among our Republicans. And it even shows up on our Democrat side as well, just down there at the very bottom. So for Democrats and independents, the messages about, or the statements about having a valley-wide, year-round approach to local transportation options and providing safe and reliable options, as well as public safety, particularly when we call Highway 40 out specifically, resonate with our independent and our Democrat audiences. We broke this out again by geography. Most of the dynamics, as I'm sure you've caught on, have to do when it comes to this issue with party and with where voters are located in the district. So for our Steamboat voters, that public safety statement rises to the top, but it also resonates across the remainder of the district, not only in Route, but in Craig as well. That valley-wide, year-round approach also resonates across the district. And again, just really emphasizing safe and reliable options for local residents and families and seniors and businesses also rises to the top, regardless of where our voters are in the district. These are the opposition statements we tested. We tested 3 of them. It says yes at the bottom, but that's not correct. These are our no statements. And really, we're seeing these statements resonate across the board, no matter what type of work we're doing. Voters are still very price sensitive right now. Things feel very unmoored, I would say, sort of at the federal level, just given all of the change that's happening, and that just seems to be really seeping into not only the state level but the local level as well. We also tried one about the RTA plan not being detailed enough. That one also does resonate with voters, with 34% saying that it was a compelling reason to vote no on the sales tax increase, and about 3 and 4, 73% telling us that it's compelling in general. The last one we tried was about tourists and skiers. That one didn't resonate with voters. And these messages, testing no messages, can be, sort of difficult to take a look at when you're, in this case, you're on the yes side of something. But we really like to give these opposition statements our best shot so that we know where we're vulnerable, where we need to assuage people of any concerns. So I'm glad that we tested this sort of variety of no messages, because it gives us an idea of where we still need to fill in the gaps for voters. So after voters had learned more, so they've heard about what the sales tax could potentially fund, as well as both support and opposition statements, we ask the measures again. So we again ask them about creating the RTA, and that's what we're showing on this slide. We're showing that initial number, that 73%, who just hearing about the issue out of the gate said they would vote yes. Once they learn more, we see a bit of a drop off, but really not much here. It's support really remains strong, with about 2 and 3 saying they would vote yes. And then when it comes to the sales tax, we saw a slight bump up once voters learned more about where the money would be going, and arguments for and against. So support here, particularly when it comes to the intensity, stays relatively stable, and even that increase there is just outside the margin of error. So just a very, very modest bump up there. So that is all in terms of the slides. I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm just going to stop screen sharing so I can see you all. And if I need to bring up the presentation again to cover any additional material, I'm happy to do so. But this way I'm not I'm not just talking to myself.
No, thank you for doing that. That is great presentation. I'd like to hear from some of you guys in the room and online. What's your first takeaway?
In the room, I got a sneak preview, so I'm gonna pass it to Randy.
It's more positive than I thought it would be, particularly the Craig numbers. I thought they would be worse than they actually were. So considering the lack of information people really have at this point. So that's a positive step in the right way. I don't know. I think as we move along, the doing them together, that seemed better than I thought it would. I really thought that would be a negative, and it didn't appear to be, at least from those didn't appear to be. So that I was not thinking of doing them together at this point at all. But from that, maybe that is something we talked about.
Right. Some of you guys online, go ahead and speak up. Let me know what you're thinking. I know you have, there's your first run through looking at some of this data. But kind of Kevin, and we've got Angelica that you're here listening. Brian, what do you guys think when you see these numbers? Give me some feedback.
And Angelica, this is posted too, so if you want to weigh in, you can. I think we need one representative more for decision making.
Hi, I don't know why my camera is not turning on, but we're just gonna roll with this. I really appreciate all of the data and the feedback. I think I wasn't particularly surprised by any of the data. Yeah, I mean, Michael, could you be a little more specific on what you're looking for? I'm happy
Just
to.
overall reaction to this. I mean, when I see this and I see the overall number being, 59% for the increase and it went up, I didn't expect that. And so I'm just kind of like, this whole survey, I'm pleasantly surprised and pleasantly, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I can speak. I did speak to both the town of Yampa and the town of Oak Creek after both of Bill's RTA meetings down there after the approval of the IGA. And South Route residents are I would say cautiously optimistic about an RTA. They are excited about the possibility of regional transportation and about being included. A lot of the comments that Catherine mentioned about, we need more information before we would vote. We want to know the level of service before we vote. I think those ring true. And so I wasn't surprised by that, but I also wasn't surprised at the support that we are seeing from, outside areas of the county, because this is something that they have been wanting as long as it meets their needs, so it's something that I think at least in my district that people want. They also just want to make sure that it fits their needs and the level of service that they want. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
It does. Tim, you have your hand up?
Yeah, thank you, Michael. And I don't want to, I'm very interested in hearing from our elected officials about their reactions, but I have a question for Catherine. And maybe this is getting way ahead, but I'm going to ask it anyway. And then if you want to defer the question, that's fine. Catherine, did you guys happen to model what the results would be like given a different electorate, a 2026 electorate?
We did not. This was just 2025, but we certainly do that all the time and can look at a 2026 electorate. I will say that would mean that the data would be slightly younger. And our younger voters tended to be, particularly women, tended to be a little bit more positive. So 2026 is going to be a much different electorate, much younger, more diverse, things, in terms of subgroups, much more of a I will say much less of a tax averse audience.
Yeah,
So
okay, that's what I was just.
real quick, as part of our conversation that'll be after this agenda item about our election options, I did do a breakdown of what our likely voter universe looks like in 25 and 26 demographically. So we do have that here as part of our conversation. So that will be part of our discussion.
So Michael, just wondering if we could move on to that piece and then give people time to see if that sparks any other questions about the survey results, because I think we do need to have a pretty good discussion today about, what does this survey tell us? And, Bill's put together a pretty good thing about the options and the matrix. And I'm a little concerned about time. I do have to leave a few minutes early myself, and I don't know how others are looking, but would that be okay if we just kind of cooked on to the next?
Wait, do you mind if,
hey, give people the chance.
Yeah, it's Brian from Steamboat. Can I just ask one question of a pulse in the room? To me, now I wasn't in the details because it's a lot of numbers. So just from gut and listening to this, it doesn't sound overwhelmingly convincing. I don't get the wow, this is great news, is 70-30 and it'll pass. Does anyone else feel that way? And I don't know. I don't listen to this and think it's a slam dunk. And then my mind goes to well, how do we get it to be a slam dunk? Or is that just the nature of ballot issues?
So Brian, I think I was pleasantly surprised by these results. And part of what was pleasantly surprising to me also was the level of knowledge and awareness about the RTA. I mean, obviously we've been at this for several years, so I would be disappointed if we hadn't seen a pretty high level of awareness. But I mean, for my money, the formation of the district is a no-brainer. I mean, I don't, those results just screamed right out to me that regardless, it's a no-brainer. As far as the tax goes, because we didn't pass the Tabor question, I would not feel the same level of confidence that I would feel in the district. But to tell you the truth, these results I think are off the charts fantastic. In addition to the fact that it's sort of an easy sell on the district, part of the thing that people want is more information to make a decision. And so let's just say you were to propose a district first, and you were to say, well, based on the survey data, what we hear from our public is they want more specificity on X, Y, and Z. you know what it is they need more specificity on. The second thing is, I think these survey results also indicate to us how important different elements of the service are. So for example, let's just say we were to pass a district and provide some form of enhanced services prior to having to go back for a tax question. We know that based on the survey data, even in Steamboat Springs, adding the Craig's, an additional Craig, which is oversubscribed and everybody knows it, would be a really popular thing that we could point to as a small term success. So, you know, I think this information gives us a ton of evidence that moving a district forward is a good call. And it also leads us to kind of the next questions about what does the community need in order to get their heads around this further.
Got it.
Agreed.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking of it more past the creation of the district. I assume that was I'm getting ahead of myself, basically. I was thinking towards the tax questions. But what I'm hearing you saying is this is a good way for us to get a pulse on how would it be funded, and if it's too early to make a decision on the funding mechanism, and this is a good indicator of what we should prioritize when we get to the funding question. And I agree with that.
Good call. All right,
All
thank
right,
you for that
thanks.
question though. Yeah, don't ever stop. I mean, that's why we're here, to talk about any questions you guys have. Bill, why don't you go into the election options matrix?
Yep, I agree. I'm pulling that up right now.
Hey everybody, this is Ryan with Ton of Fate, and I have to unfortunately bow out right now. I have a grant site visit coming up here in 5 minutes. But I just wanted to jump in here and kind of echo what Sonia said, that with this data, I think the creation of the RTA, just the creation, slam dunk. The funding or the funding of it and the taxing is a real concern for me, especially Bill, in your comments of that those numbers typically drop with that Tabor language. So I really think this group, we need to really look at not just language, but just like the timing of when we go to voters for either the creation and the taxing, and potentially look at a staggered approach there to the ballot. I know I'm just going to say that and then might drop out of here, but Matt Medisco is on here too, so I'll catch up with him later, and looking forward to reviewing all this with you. So thanks so much, everybody.
Ryan, thank you.
Yeah, and I'll just say too, from my perspective, working on issues across the state at the moment, that folks are trying to decide whether to go in the fall. It's a tough environment right now in terms of any type of tax increase. Like I said, that sort of chaos from the federal level is really bleeding into the state and local level. So that's just something for consideration as well, on top of a more difficult electorate in an off-year election.
Yeah, thanks, and great presentation. Thank you very much for that. So I put up on the screen a matrix that I've put together. I hope everyone can read that. I felt that there were 4 kind of ballot scenarios we could look at. And if there's something missing, please let me know and I'll update this. 3 scenarios for this upcoming election year, and then, or whatever election year we want to go toward. And then an election year, a second election year. In this case, I pegged it to 2026. So scenario 1 is formation only. So 1 ballot question, doesn't have Tabor language in it because there's no tax. It's not all capitalized. Sometimes that matters to folks. I mean, that's why Tabor has capitalizations, right? So it shouts at you. It allows for that future RTA tax and or bond to be decided across an entire authority area with a 50% plus 1 vote. So a simple majority. And then I created a column with just concerns or I don't think they're negatives. I just think they're issues we have to think about. For example, I think if we're doing formation only, we would probably want to explain to folks that this might be a 2-vote, 2-step process. How would we fund services if we're not asking for funding right now? And we would still have that separate elections in each jurisdiction. That would still require up to 6 elections. And, then we'd also have to think about that minimum membership. What creates the RTA? Is it still the city and the county? Is it just the city and one other jurisdiction? How do we want to, kind of structure that minimum membership? Then I go into one question that's formation and tax. That's what Eagle Valley did, right? So once again, one ballot question. If you get it approved in your minimum threshold of members, then you're formed and you're at least partially funded. But some of the concerns, it's an all or nothing approach, right? And it's hard to come back from if you lose that. The ballot question begins with tax impact. It has to. So even though so the IGA formation part is kind of tucked into the bottom or the second half of the ballot question. And so I did include a sample of an Eagle Valley a ballot question that comprised the tax and the formation. So you can see that. And so every community, no matter if you're Yampa or Steamboat Springs or whatever, all of them would start with the same tax impact. Shall taxes be increased 12 million? So Yampa voters, Oak Creek voters, smaller community voters might go, well, that's a big tax. How's that coming out of our community? So there's an education challenge that could come out of that, because you can't do shall taxes and then do it only by what we think would come out of that community. It has to be the whole thing, the whole pot. So your voters might react negatively.
They'll freak out. They'll see that number, they're gonna freak out.
And then do you count
No
by,
matter what we say.
do you count by jurisdiction? Like if it fails in one jurisdiction, they're just not in the district?
That's correct.
And then therefore they wouldn't be taxed.
That's correct.
Okay. Wow, that's a little more complicated.
It's all or nothing. That's why I kind of put it in there. It's really it's kind of a Texas Hold'em. You sliding your chips in, right?
We're getting a lot of thumbs down on that approach and everyone just like back.
There's a 2-question option for 2025, so you can ask formation and tax separately. Voters could be confused why they're getting asked 2 questions. If the tax is defeated, it might be harder to get another tax question on the ballot in a subsequent year. You might have to take off some time from asking a tax question, but you could still get formed. So those are some of the challenges on those. And of course, the scenario of 26, if you form in 25 and ask a tax question in a subsequent election, it doesn't have to be 26. It could be a subsequent election. Once again, that advantage is 50% plus 1 of the vote. So that could help address the Craig issue, right? Because you are, I have that data on a separate piece of paper, but I think you are at least 20% of what would be the RTA's voter base. The ballot question would still be that full tax impact. So even, so folks would see that large number. I would think if you ask for funding in a subsequent year, we darn well better be prepared to show how the RTA has moved the ball forward, right? We got to show a year of progress or 2 years of progress, whatever that would be. So we'd have to be able to kind of have some kind of we deserve to be funded now message. And obviously, if you went for funding separately in a subsequent year and it was defeated, that would be a significant political setback. So just that's the sausage making of this. Now, sausage making.
So the question I have with that is, say we do one and we put on the formation of the RTA and it passes. In route and Steamboat in particular, but say it passes in Hayden, Grego, all the way across the board. Then you do the tax in 2026. You're still doing individual elections. Are you doing it for the whole thing? So, I mean, so it's an RTA, so the RTA, meaning everybody, is voting on it, yes or no. It's not like you can turn it down in Craig or turn it down in.
Correct. One vote.
Correct. One vote.
50% plus one.
Got it.
A simple, what I mean is a simple majority.
Yeah, I just wanted to clear.
50% plus one,
Right.
one vote, one ballot question.
Yeah.
One jurisdiction, not 6. Yeah, or however many join the
The only
RTA.
issue I see with that is explaining, and particularly in Craig, explaining, because I would think if they understood that Steamboat, which has a lot more people, and Route, which has more people, could outvote them and they'd have to pay anyway, that's really gonna hurt them wanting to vote for the RTA in the first place. So I know that's gotta be an explanation, and it's gotta be figured out how to positively, I mean, it'll help as far as getting it funded. It might not help as far as getting it passed in 2025.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that if we were to go that route, that we would need to be aware of that concern and make sure that communities who might feel that way have a demonstrated return on investment. I mean, because the return on investment, like, let's just say we district this year and don't do anything further other than utilize the funding from Ski Corps, potentially anything we can wrangle out of the power plant, potentially anything we can pull from the Senate Bill 230 that we got passed a couple of years back. Let's say we can provide some enhanced services for a year, 2 years, right? Then all of a sudden we are looking at a message that says something to the effect of, you know, the ballot language is gonna say that scary big number, right? But in Craig, the messaging might look like, you know, having been in the district, you have received this value of services over time by paying 0.
Right.
You know, we anticipate that if this tax were to pass in Craig, it would come this much from Craig. Like, so demonstrating that proportionate receipt of services versus the actual paying in, and then also highlighting that question of the fact that regardless of the fact that Craig is, you know, going to be a minority voting bloc within the district, you still have one vote as a leader of the RTA. So I mean, I think it's really a question of just how
you word it and how you push it, and saying the positive. It's the same thing we're doing with LMD right now. Is wording what's its investment, what's it giving to the community. That's what you need to do.
Correct.
And I think we need to, if we were to go that route, I mean, I think we need to be sure that we can back up any promises of enhanced services in a year or two's time without taxing.
Right.
We need to be able to make sure that we are able to back that up. We have the capacity, we have a plan that's well articulated, all of that.
That's precisely why I put that in the concerns. You have to have a way to show that there's some value was delivered from this RTA. Now we would like funding or more funding. I've put up on the screen, I apologize, it's hard to read, but most of you have this as a PDF. This is, so looking at the voter files, so voters are incredibly habitual people. So that if you vote in odd numbered year elections, you're gonna vote in this one. If you vote only in even numbered year elections, you're probably not gonna vote in this one. So we can take voter history and really get a good snapshot. This is a lot of what Catherine does as well. It's a lot of what I do. And so what I did here was I did try to capture what our district's voting base could look like. So when I look at the voter base, and these are likely voters, active voters is a slightly bigger number, but I look at active voters, not just total voters, because there's just some people who never turn a ballot in. I don't worry about them. So we have about 23,000 active voters. So that's the column on the left. You can see how they break out by party. About 22% are Democrats, 24% are Republicans. More than half are unaffiliated. Like every mountain community, There's more male voters than female voters. But in general, in voter turnout, that number oftentimes equalizes or flips. Age groups, you can see here that you have a pretty balanced set of age ranges here in your active voters, but not in voter turnout, as Catherine talked about. And then you can see here about 23% of the voters are in Craig, 5% in Hayden, a little less than 3% in Oak Creek, 41% about in Steamboat Springs, 27% about in unincorporated Route, and then about 1% in Yampa. So voter turnout. So the column here that says November 25 likely voters, that's when I apply metrics. How often do you vote? Did you vote in the last odd numbered year election? So in our district or proposed district in 23, there was a voter turnout of about 42%. I always like to bump that up a little bit, add in newly registered people who have registered since. So I'm looking at a turnout of about 47%. You can see here, like every odd numbered year election, unaffiliateds drop, right? It's funny, unaffiliated say, well, I don't want to be in a party because I don't want to be motivated in part of party politics. But what gets an unaffiliated voter to vote? Partisan politics. They don't vote on issues. It's just a plain fact of the matter. So they drop, partisanship comes up. The key thing here is age comes up, as Catherine reflected on, is that our 65 to 74-year-olds, for example, outperformed their registration in an odd numbered year election by 10 points. That's what that 10.62 means. 75 and older outperformed by 8.5 points. Interesting here, in an odd numbered year election, Craig voters drop off about 3 points in voter turnout in typical years. And Steamboat City voters bump up 2 points. County voters bump up about 2 points. So that's how to read this document if you're looking at it offline at another time. Even numbered year, so a 26, a gubernatorial year. So in 2022, the last gubernatorial year, we had about 69% turnout here. Obviously, these are open seats, so there might be a little more intensity, a little more push, a little more efforts on the partisan sides to turn out voters. So we might see turnout maybe above 70%. But once again, those unaffiliated underperform a little, but not as bad. And then you see more younger voters come in. So they still underperform because it's hard to get younger people to vote. That's why MTV started Rock the Vote 50 years ago. That shows my age. And so, but it does kind of dilute the older vote, which is typically a little more tax sensitive. Now, I will tell you, on RTA work I've done in RAFTA and Eagle Valley, older voters like RTAs because there's mobility involved here. There's a benefit. Older voters see a benefit with transit. So I wouldn't just say, oh, older voters, we're going to lose. That's an important constituency for a transportation system. So I'll just pause there, but that's what these numbers all mean. And it's, once again, part of our sausage making.
All right, why don't we, can you bring up the questions about the matrix options? Let's kind of get some feedback from everybody on that. There was option 1, 2, and 3, 2025. And then the second one would be, you know, whether we move it to 2026 for the funding mechanism. Give me some feedback, y'all.
Michael, I'll jump in because I'm gonna have to leave for reals in about 10 minutes. So I feel pretty strongly that we would have absolutely no reason to not go for a district in 2025. I mean, to me, that's just a simple no-brainer. I think the idea of funding the programming, I feel like we worked really hard, and you know, Matthew can speak to this, to get some pieces of legislation passed at the state legislature 2 years ago, that would fund this kind of programming. And I think we need to hold the state's feet to the fire on helping us get some of that money. Just to give you a context on Senate Bill 2030, which is the, or 230, which was the negotiated settlement with oil and gas. So I guess the money coming into that one is going to be 52.7 million in 25, and then 116 million in fiscal year 2026. So when I look at like, how could we fund it if we weren't to do anything on the ballot for funding in 2025? We have the ski port contribution for sure, right? Sarah's with me and she's saying yes. We have the potential for any kind of negotiated settlement that the town of Hayden and Routt County are asking out of Xcel Energy. And we have Senate Bill 23230, which I've been actively tracking since we lobbied for it 2 years ago to make sure that whatever formula funding is available to us, our RTA and Mountain Rail are front and center. So I feel as though there's a very strong argument for being able to create a district and provide our constituents robust enhanced services without having to ask them for a funding question. So that's where I'm at. And, you know, the only question mark in my mind at this point is the thing that Bill brought up earlier, which is the minimum membership. I have some thoughts about that, but that's kind of where I'm at with the question of what to go to the voters with. And, you know, the Routt County Commissioners have discussed this in kind of high level terms and haven't heard anything contrary to that as far as really a burning desire to go with a funding question in 25.
I added more details about the 24-230, just.
Oh, good. Thank you.
So people have it, they can see.
Great. All right. Some of you guys online. Electeds, what do you think?
I'll jump in. I think the formation of an RTA needs to be on the 2025 ballot. I think kicking the can for formation down the road is not going to be beneficial. That being said, I agree with Commissioner Macy's and actually what with Bill Ray said about if you're going to do the formation first and then go for funding, then we need to show that it works. Like, then we need to show that the district has done something. So I think that's my caveat. Commissioner Macy's laid out a few ways that could be possible. When we had our joint meetings with the town of Vampa and town of Oak Creek last week, that idea was very appealing to those town boards. The idea that we could form a district, we could dip our toes into the water, we could see some results before going to the voters. Both town boards were more enthusiastic about that option than a potential funding question this year with the formation question. So I'll throw that out there. I do have, you know, just general voter concerns about the data that Bill showed. I think we're just heading into 2 really uncertain years when it comes to voters and voter turnout. You know, he showed 2023 voter turnout. If we go back to 2021 voter turnout, which was after the 2020 election, voter turnout in 21 was high on an odd number year. We're upwards of 48% voter turnout there. And so I just think when we're tracking how many voters are going to come out in 25 versus 26, I think both of those numbers are low. I think there's going to be a lot of shifting dynamics with voters and turnout and demographics. And so while I think that's a decent start, I would push back a little on some of those numbers. Just looking historically after contentious presidential, even elected years, what happens after that? But those are my comments.
Sweet. Hey, Matt, do you have any opinion on this, if you're there?
Matt, I don't know if he's on a call, but he commented, Hayden is on board with the commissioner.
I'm not on a call. I was just trying to find the unmute button. And I'm not an elected official. It just goes that. But because ours had to leave, that's why I jumped on. But I think Ryan kind of said in support of the commissioner, both commissioners, I would say at this point. And I think there's ways from a funding standpoint, if we can put those in place. I have I think it's going to be imperative to not, this may sound kind of counterintuitive, but we need to show service, an increase in service from what people are getting today. Yet have more service that they know they want and not necessarily do that, because if they get a service that they're really happy with, they may not vote yes simply for funding because they'll be like, well, you're already doing it. Why should we vote for more? So I think it's just really imperative that we're very strategic about what that service is. That can come with the board, etc. But I think it's something we need to keep in the back of our minds. Like, we need to give them something that's just like so overwhelmingly great that they will vote for it, coming up in that next election funding cycle. So that's my comment. And we're totally supportive of this year. If we wait, I think there's moments in time. The moment in time to pass the RTA district is now. And then after that, we can deal with all of those other things. But and we should be talking about them at the same time as we're working towards the district. But those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Hey, it's
I think
Brian sorry. Can I chime in real quick?
Please.
I second the formation this year. I do disagree with, I think, funding next year, but I disagree with providing service. Why buy the cow when you get the milk for free? I think we're seeing that in Steamboat now. We are budget constrained. We have a lot of amenities. People don't feel the pain, therefore they don't want to pay for it. And I don't see how people would pass it if we're already giving things without funding it. But otherwise, I'm on board for this year, and I'm open to next year as well.
Ryan, I think what I hear you saying was kind of in relation to what I was saying. I was trying to kind of go along to get along in terms of maybe a slight increase in service, but that's exactly my concern. Like,
yeah,
exactly. And
Yep.
maybe the thing is that we get it passed, and then we say, okay, you passed it, now you need to fund it.
Yeah.
And just maintain what we're doing. And like,
Yep.
maybe even threaten that the service that's going to correct now might go away. Like,
I
so
hear
all
what both
those
of you
things
guys
might
are
be
saying.
good, but those are things we could discuss.
Agreed.
Matt and Brian, thanks for those comments. I just want to chime in really quick that I can relate with what you're saying, and I think those things need to be kind of discussed when we figure out if we do get initial funding from the ski area or from these other things, what do we use that funding for? But I relate to that, so I'm glad you brought that up.
The question that I have with either one of these, go ahead.
Can we get Sarah in? She's been trying to jump in here.
Oh, yeah. Please do.
Thank you. I think this is a question for Fair and Pierce, which is, they're the ones who are looking at what service can be provided with a different funding level. So I think that's that would be important information for us to have to make that feel better about those next steps. If we, what can be provided with the money that we have or what we can guarantee.
Because I think it's really important to recognize if you set it up, form it, there are costs just to form it. You're going to want an executive director. You're going to need some HR. You're going to have accounting. You're going to have a legal counsel. Those things all cost something. And fortunately, EVTA is a year and a half out from going through that same experience. So we can lean on them for what that cost, what that took, so we can understand. And then we look at the rest of the bucket of money that might be available. And that's where we talk to a Fair and Peers, Jonathan, others to say what's possible here now.
Yep. No, thank you. Yeah, that is my concern and thank you, Sarah, for speaking on behalf of the Ski Corps. Because we pass a ballot language, but we have no money to hire anybody unless we have some seed money. What level of service can we even supply? It's like $1 million is helpful, but that's just going to take care of a lot of administrative fees and whatever else we can do moving this thing forward. Again, using Eagle Valley as an example of, what's their startup cost. I think we're ready to have that conversation as we move forward with this decision. Tim, do you have a question?
Yeah, or a comment. I appreciated Commissioner Macy's sharing the possibility of funding that would allow this district to move forward without a tax measure in the short run. That's great. These poll results say to me that there's going to be work to do and an opportunity, if we wait a year, to message around those strong messages that were shown in the polling. But I think it's also important to do some tax tolerance work because maybe it's not a 1% sales tax, maybe where the break point is at 50-cent sales tax, or maybe you want to look at property taxes or some other taxes to see what kind of taxes the voters will really support. And having a year to do that is helpful. So, I do think that this next year should not be wasted in just and waiting around for 2026, because I don't think the electorate is going to make the difference. I think Bill's numbers suggest that. There's still a lot of work to be done. And 53% support when the tax is mentioned is not strong enough, especially if there's opposition that shows up. So those are my comments. I think there's an opportunity for us to test messages, use messages, show success, and figure out where the voters have tax tolerance.
Michael, can I jump in real quick? Because we are coming up on our 11 o'clock time, though. I can go forever on this topic. So I just want to, before folks really start to drop off, talk about two things. Direction is important here from you all to me and the Kaplan-Kirsch team, because the Kaplan-Kirsch folks do need to start contemplating ballot language and what that looks like, and start talking to the clerks about what that's going to look like. That deadline's not today, it's not next week, but it's going to creep up on us. We probably do need to talk about the minimum membership threshold that Sonia mentioned. She had ideas on that. We might have to reassemble quick again here soon to have that conversation if that's changed, because that would be a change to the IGA. I don't think material that would trigger, but I'll let Polly chime in on that, trigger like another round of public hearings or anything like that. But the other thing I want to bring up before we lose people is we need to start, these poll numbers show if you learn about this, you'll like it. I take that from this. To know about the RTA is possibly to like it. We need to move into a 3-month phase of community outreach and engagement. I got to get this stakeholder committee come together. That's something that I, got kind of delayed because of all the IGA work and the public hearings. We got to get that moving and get our stakeholders, our community leaders more invested in this RTA process. But the other thing is more broad communication. So working with Fair and Peers, we actually have a meeting next week. We want to do an informational mailer. It's in the plan, it's in the budget, to each community about the RTA process, but we want to customize it based on what we've learned in this poll. So it's going to have 90% of the same message. It's just how it's organized for the individual communities on how it we talk about the RTA. And then with each one, it'll have a separate QR code and web address for a local survey for folks to take after they learn more, so we can get more of that feedback loop going on a community by community basis. I think direction on where we're thinking on the ballot's important, because if we're not going to do a tax measure in 25, I'm not going to put a lot of tax language in this thing, right? It's going to be about the greatness of formation. So that's my sense of what I need to get out of today to keep doing my job for you all on this. So I'll stop there.
I mean, Michael and the others I think moving forward with formation is what we want to do at this point. That's the impression I got from everyone we've heard from. I don't think the tax issue is gonna happen. It's not right now.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely lean on having this be a ballot language this year on the RTA for formation and a tax on that. I mean, I'm not swayed enough. I was encouraged with the poll, with the survey, that there was a lot of people still, you know, there was a majority kind of that wanted to go through both of them. I just think it's a higher risk, and I'm not willing to risk that. I'd rather get this the formation done, and then really kind of want to lean on the next steps, because I want to anticipate those next steps now moving forward, so we don't get blindsided. What does it mean? What do we leave behind? And having Eagle Valley just a couple years ahead of us is going to help out a lot. Sonia, you had a question?
Hey, sorry, not so much a question. Just wanted to comment on what Bill had talked about regarding public outreach and the mailers and so on. I mean, one of the things that I dropped a note to Jonathan Flint, who was in the room in person, is just that we really do need to, if we go this route of 2025 district and then some enhanced services using existing funding, we really need to line out what's feasible and within what time frame. So I just would caution against sending any kind of generic mailers out before we have kind of a lined out, if we're going in this direction, you know, here are some of the things that we find realistic. I mean, those of you guys who are on city council know transit and how important it is for them to be well lined up in advance of the busy season. And so, you know, question, if we decide we want to do that enhanced service to Craig, what kind of capacity would SST have to do that? I know we're over time, and I don't think right now is the appropriate time to talk about that, but I do think, you know, more education is good, as Bill said, when people know it, they like it, but making sure that it's the right education to give people a little more detail. Thanks.
Thanks, Sonia. Yeah, yeah, let's kind of give you guys some feedback. It is running close to that 11 o'clock. We're almost there. What information, Polly, do you guys need from us, or what do you want to include based upon the conversation you have here that you need for a takeaway?
No, our objective, I think that the threshold issues and most important feedback are probably what Bill raised, which is he's going to be starting messaging and needs to know what he's messaging in terms of funding versus, and I'm speaking for you, Bill. So, but to me, the issues about formation and funding separately are, you know, kind of the first and threshold. They do affect the IGA. I think second is participation, and you know what the jurisdictions we need to be approving for minimum levels of participation is probably number 2. I'm not sure that that's as critical for us to resolve right now. There were a few other topics that have come up as being potentially critical, although number 3 was resort participation and how we want to address that, if at all, in the IGA. I'm seeing from the poll results that might be a little less important. I think the election language ties into, you know, what we're approving because that affects the IGA. I think the service detail is another piece that's important for purposes of the IGA and knowing what we want to be sure to address in the initial service plan versus not, and that may be tied to funding. So I think I'm coming back to the election is probably the first piece of information we know, we really need to know for the IGA, and probably more for Bill than the IGA. But all of those 4 issues were the ones that have been ones that have IGA language impacts.
Okay. Bill, I think we're going to need to have another meeting in a couple of weeks.
I think so.
Yeah.
I will work to get another formation on the schedule quickly because we got stuff to do. Real quick before people leave, the IGA has been transmitted to CDOT. They've acknowledged receipt. Our neighboring jurisdictions of the counties have all received it as well. Core Transit, which is EBTA, has already signed off on the IGA, no issues. I will be following up with all the counties. Moffett County passed a resolution yesterday saying they're okay with our IGA and they approved the flagpole. So that was kind of the most important county one. And they've been very good to work with on this because they actually believe this is really good for Craig and they support it. Would it be awesome if they came out like that publicly during the campaign? Right. That'd be great. So we had a really cool update coming from Fair and Peers. I think we will table it till the next meeting. Sorry, Michael. But they are working on cut sheets on these service goals with more meat on the bone. That would be a public facing document, a PDF handout, something for the website. And I know people have to go, but it was
Bill,
great reveal today.
Yeah, I'm sorry we can't get to that, but I got to jump on this other call. But honestly, like, I'm not clear on what just happened there. It sounds to me like there is agreement from all parties that we would advance the formation of a district on the 2025 ballot. Is that incorrect? Is that why we're trying to meet in another 2 weeks?
There's just a lot of details we didn't get through today of this meeting, and we just don't have time to. That Fair and Peers report and other minor details. But before we kind of formalize sending Kaplan Kirsch moving forward with 2 different ballots, one for 25, one for 26, we just need to have a little bit more discussion. And at 11 o'clock, we don't have that time today.
Why are we even talking about 2026? I mean, 2025 is the important decision that has to be made. I guess I'm just confused because I thought we had agreement around district formation in 2025.
District formation 2025, funding 2026.
I don't think we've made a decision about funding in 2026. That's my point. Is I guess I'm trying to figure out, can we leave this meeting with one decision that we have agreement around, which is the formation of the district, and other things TBD?
Yes. Yeah, because the TBD is why I want to have a meeting in a couple of weeks. We don't really know about that second part of it. And that's what I think is important to continue the conversation. We don't have time today. Initially, if you're going to say anything coming out of this meeting, it would be the 2025 formation ballot language, and that would be it. My question was, we need to talk to Eagle Valley about how do we fund any potential services between the ballot passing in 2025 and showing some resemblance of a service by 2026. And I don't know what that's going to cost or what we can actually accomplish without having a partner like Ski Corps. Go ahead, Polly.
I was just going to say, it seems to me that that's pretty essential for the messaging piece that Bill needs to start right away also. So it seems fairly urgent to understand that relationship between the 2-step process and how it affects Bill's messaging. Our IGA language can certainly follow, but it seems like the messaging is kind of the critical component that needs to start right away.
Yeah, let's go ahead and book try to do a meeting at the end of May, like in a couple of weeks, and let's kind of keep this conversation going.
Yep, I will. I'll look for a doodle poll today. How about that? I'll get something out right away so we can get the next meeting set.
Yeah, overall, guys, I'm really encouraged about the survey. To me, this meeting was about the survey results and then making this decision about 2025. So we got a 75% good on this, but we still need to meet again to move forward. So please be with us when we meet in a couple of weeks, and we'll get a doodle poll to pick this up. And we'll go with the service goal updates with Fair and Peers and go in some details on that, which we need for the messaging.
Okay.
Any remaining questions or comments from anybody? All right. This is a respective time. We just don't want to keep running over. There's a lot more in this. Bill and I will talk a bit more of the agenda leading up to that and then what kind of time frame it will look like. But otherwise, I really appreciate your time. And without any further questions or comments or hands raised, we'll just adjourn the meeting. Sound
Thank
good?
you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, you guys.